Chef Jess back in the vegan gastronomy kitchen, and as you would have seen from the title today, we are making sponge cake for one of my all-time favorites, Lamingtons. Now, I know a lot of you folks out there probably don't know what a Lamington is, because it is one of the things, one of the common pastries that you would see in Commonwealth nations like Australia, New Zealand, and something that I personally grew up as a kid. But I wanted to share this recipe with you today, specifically because we are making a very special type of sponge cake called a Genoise, or basically traditionally it would be using a lot of eggs whipped into a foam, and I want to show you how you can also make it vegan today. And we're going to use a couple of special products today. We don't always use special ingredients here on the channel, but I do like to share with you some of the really unique ones so you can take your vegan pastry and baking to a whole new level. Now, I just want to make sure that I can see you folks online, so if you are watching, please say hello, tell me where you're from, and if you're excited about this video. Do you know what a Lamington is? Have you had one before? All right, I can see myself popping up here, so excellent. All right, so if you have any questions, just pop them down. Okay, I have also, folks, linked the recipe in the description for you, so if you want to find out all the ingredients that I'm using today and amounts, you can just check that out. And with all of, pretty much all of the pastry and baking recipes that we do here at Vegan Gastronomy is going to be in grams, just so it is very, very precise, especially for a recipe like this. Okay, so I did mention for this recipe we are using a couple of unique ingredients here today. So because a Genoise sponge cake traditionally would be using a lot of whole eggs, we are going to be using a very special ingredient today that replaces eggs. But it's not just any egg replacer, it replaces all 8 major functions of eggs, and that is, of course, I know some of you folks have seen it here before, panis egg. So panis egg is one of the potato protein blends developed here at Vegan Gastronomy, sold on our Free From That website. So it's a combination of potato protein along with a lot of other ingredients, which is replacing the 8 major functions of eggs. And one of the unique functions of eggs is it foams. So I know there's a lot of egg white replacers out there, like aquafaba and things like that, but there's very few whole egg replacers that can also foam, in addition to binding, retaining moisture, coagulating, and all those kind of fun things. So yeah, it's a fantastic tool to have in your vegan pastry kitchen, especially if you are a professional cook, chef, or have food service business, or you just want to take your vegan pastry making game to the next level. This is a professional product, and as I mentioned before, we don't always use special ingredients here on this channel. So like some simple cake recipes, we also do those throughout our programs. So yeah. All right, one of the other unique ingredients we are using today, this one, it's a unique ingredient, but funnily enough, you can actually buy it at your local pharmacy, and it is sold as a supplement, great for brain function. It is called soy lecithin. So when we think of eggs, we think of emulsification. So whilst panis egg does that, soy lecithin will also emulsify, but it gives this really nice creamy, buttery flavor. It also foams as well, and it just gives a really nice texture to our sponge cake, because when we are making a Genoise sponge cake, the difference between that and, say, a really simple vegan sponge cake where you just add like vinegar and flour and sugar and oil, the Genoise has a very tight crumb structure, so it's more close together and fine. So it's just a different texture. If you've ever made just like a basic vegan sponge cake, it tends to have bigger holes in it. We've got some people watching live. Hi TJ, hello. I always use soy lecithin. Yeah, it's fantastic. So as I mentioned, it is sold as a health supplement. So find it in your local pharmacy, and you can use it in a lot of your vegan pastry and baking. Yeah, so that one's really fun. So let's get into it. We're going to make this sponge cake. Enough talking. All right, so I'm going to bring you guys down so you can have a closer look at what I am doing here. So I am using my stand mixer today. You can use just a hand mixer. And so what we are going to start off with is we talked about our egg replacement, which was our panis egg, and all you need to do to hydrate it is mix it with water. So for every egg, you want to use 5 grams of your panis egg and 45 grams or mils of water. So if you're using spoons, that's 2 teaspoons of panis egg to 3 tablespoons of water per egg replacement. And just kind of let it sit for, 15, 30 minutes on the counter. Just let it absorb all of that water. We're actually replacing 5 eggs today, so this is a very egg-heavy recipe, and that's one of the really unique functions of using panis egg. So it is great for recipes which are egg-heavy, so using a lot of eggs. All right, so next up we have in our jug here, I've already measured out, we have some flavorless oil. You can use something like a vegetable blend or sunflower oil or something like this, grapeseed oil. And then we also have our soy lecithin. We are using one of our other unique ingredients today. Now you just want to blend this up. And as I mentioned, because it is an emulsifier, it's going to combine all of that oil and water together. And usually when you buy your soy lecithin, it comes in granules. Oh, we've got somebody else watching. Wow, 5 egg replacement, yes. Yeah, so when we talk about egg replacements in the vegan world, the most common egg replacers only replace one function. And usually most vegan egg replacers just replace the binding aspect. So that's just kind of like bringing all your starches together and your ingredients together. A lot of people confuse emulsification with binding. So emulsification is specifically combining your fat elements in your recipe with your water components. So what that does is it really does change the texture of your cake. Okay. Most common emulsions you see is things like mayonnaise or salad dressing. So people use like egg yolks for that because it has natural lecithin in it. Okay. So that's all nice and combined. All of our granules are now smooth and it has already started to foam up a little bit. So I'm going to combine that with my panis egg, my 5 panis eggs. So if you think about it, have you ever tried to replace 5 eggs for a cake recipe to make it vegan? Let me know in the comments if you've tried and if you've ever had any success. Okay, so next off we are adding a little bit of bicarb soda, or we call it in Australia just bicarb. Okay, so I'm just adding that in. Alrighty, so I'm just going to give this a short little mix. I just don't want my panis egg to get caught down the bottom of my mixer. Just give it a little helping hand. Alrighty, so we're going to get this onto our mixer here. Get this out of the way. And you want to use your ball whisk attachment. So I'm going to so you guys can see it a bit better. There we are. Okay. So we're going to get this onto our mixer here with our ball whisk attachment. And we just want to mix this. You don't want to go on a full high speed. You want to do kind of like a medium high. So maybe 6 or 7. We're just going to kind of mix that until everything's incorporated. Now here I have my sugar. Now I am using a caster sugar or a fine sugar. I do find in Europe sometimes it's a little bit hard to find caster sugar, so I often just put my white granulated sugar in a food processor. So there's a little tip for you guys. If you can't get caster sugar, which is just a fine granulated sugar, you can just put it in the food processor. Yeah, I want to know too, what's the most amount of eggs have you replaced in a recipe? So for me, generally, if we're talking about just like a single cake, I would say around 5, yeah. Usually, even in traditional cakes, they don't usually use more than that, unless you're making a really, really big cake. But most vegan egg replacers will only replace 1, maybe 2 eggs, and you'll see them mostly in styles of cakes like cooked breads and things like that. So that's the fantastic thing about panis egg, is you can use it for egg-heavy recipes. Brownies is one. If you like a fudgy brownie and your traditional brownie recipe calls for a lot of eggs, you can use the panis egg for that. That's amazing. It's going to kind of hold everything together. You're going to get the nice light crispy crust on the top, and it's going to be really fudgy and moist. All right, so this is starting to mix up. It's already starting to foam a little bit. I'm going to start adding my sugar. Now you want to add about a tablespoon at a time. Just slowly add it. So I'm just kind of sprinkling it in. But yeah, folks, if you guys online are interested in learning how to replace eggs, we do a lot of it all throughout all of our programs, from our vegan cuisine to vegan cheese, baking and pastry. And we don't just use our products, we also show you how to use lots of different ingredients, from what we call them as modernist ingredients to conventional ingredients. So, you know, your classics as well, like your chia seeds, flaxseed, aquafaba, and then we also do some of the modern ingredients. Iota, different types of carrageenans, different types of cellulose. So we use one today, the lecithin. So yeah, it's really fun. All right, so we're just slowly adding our sugar here. So yeah, we're making our Lamingtons today for you folks who are joining us live. We're doing a really nice Genoise style sponge cake, which is traditionally made with a lot of eggs which are whipped into a foam, which gives you a nice tight, fine crumb structure. And then once this is cooked and cooled, it gets cubed and then dipped into a chocolate sauce with coconut. I don't know what it is about coconut, but a lot of pastries from my home country have a lot of coconut in it, and perhaps it's because we're so close to Asia. Oh, we have a question. What's the egg replacer you use? Okay, so we are using the egg replacer called panis egg. So we call it the panacea of egg replacement. If you click on the link, which I've just put into the description, you will see the recipe, and there's a link in there to show you where you can purchase it from. It is a whole egg replacer. It will replace the 8 major functions of eggs. So it does everything that eggs do. It's not just foaming and emulsifying like aquafaba. It's going to do your binding, your coagulation. It's going to retain moisture. You'll be able to make cakes that are freeze-thaw stable. It does lots of stuff. So it's pretty amazing. It's kind of a bit of a cheat in the kitchen, we call it. All right, so I'm going to bring you guys down so you can see. I don't know if you can see in there. Let's have a look. I want you to see how it's foaming. Can you see it foaming up there, guys? Pretty crazy, huh? It's getting nice and fluffy, but it's not like an egg white fluffy where you get a really stiff peak. This is like a soft cloud. It usually looks exactly like whole eggs. Perhaps a little bit lighter, but the consistency is the same. So we're going to let that mix for about 5 minutes. So I'll bring you guys back up here. You can see we're going to go on to the next step. So, okay, over here we have some flour. And I am using just a cake flour, which is a lower protein flour. And you want to get one which is like a nice soft flour. And we have some baking powder. So we are just going to sift those. I've got a little bit of baking paper here. Just add those two together, and we're going to sift them together. I might get a bigger sheet of baking paper. That one's a little bit small for me. where's my paper? Over here. Could use the other one for our dipping. Okay, so we're just sifting our flour and our leavening agent, which is just a baking powder. And I want to give a big shout out to Sarah, because she actually gave me the original recipe for this lamington. Of course, it had eggs in it, but I reworked it and we've made it egg-free. We've made it vegan. So if you're watching Sarah or if you're watching this pre-recorded, thank you very much for this recipe. She is one of my instructors who works in TAFE Australia. So big shout out to Sarah from TAFE Australia. She is a fantastic baker and she makes lots of cakes and breads. So she taught me how to make sourdough bread as well. So there you go. All right, so this is getting nice and foamy. I'm going to grab myself a nice big metal spoon. We're going to be folding all that foam together with our flour. And you want to get on the ready a nice big baking pan. This one is, I think it's like 25 or 22 by, yeah, it's like a standard square cake. And I have greased it and floured it. You can do baking paper if that's your preference. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's getting really nice and foamy and thick and fluffy. There you go. Manuel's put the link for the panaseg for everyone who's been asking, who's watching live in the comments. All right, I'm pretty happy with this, guys. So we're going to start incorporating our flour together. So check this out. Look. They say that traditionally when you would use eggs, they said that you should be able to do a few squiggles, or you can do like a little love heart. Can you see that? And after about 3 seconds, it will disappear. So that's when you know your eggs, or in this case, we're using the vegan egg, the panis egg. Alrighty, so let's get this over here. All right. So we're going to start incorporating our flour. So I'm going to put in half of my flour, and then we're going to use, I've just pulled out a big metal spoon. Supposedly this is to get rid of less air bubbles. I actually don't think it makes a difference if you use this or a spatula. Because the panis egg is so stable, it's more stable than traditional eggs, so it's kind of hard to deflate it. One of the other pros. There you go. All right, so I'm just going to fold this, and when you're folding, you just want to turn the bowl around, and you're just folding it over. You're just trying not to deflate it too much. As I said, it's kind of hard with this product because it is so stable. I get a lot of questions, what's panis egg made of? So as we mentioned, it is a potato protein blend. We use a special potato protein in combination with seaweeds. We also have fiber in there as well, which helps to give structure. We have some leavening agents in there as well, and some stabilizers. What's really fun about using the panis egg is you can do some really hard pastries that traditionally are really difficult to make vegan. So like your eclairs, your choux pastry, butter cakes, which are really heavy on eggs and butter, which are hard to do vegan without kind of hacking it into making it more of a quick bread style. You can do it with the panis egg. So it just gives you a lot more versatility in the kitchen, especially for those of you folks out there. I know I do get a lot of classically trained pastry chefs who love this product because they can use the training that they already have and then just transition into using an egg replacer that does everything that they're used to. All right, so we're just folding the last bit of our flour in. So you'll see it might start looking a little bit See how it's looking a little bit lumpy? Don't worry about that. That's just the leavening agent starting to activate. So your baking powder is an instant leavening agent, unlike the bicarb. The bicarb doesn't start working until it hits the heat, but the baking powder works instantly. Okay, so that's done. We are going to get this into our cake tin. Just make sure you haven't got any little bits of flour left over. Just scrape down your sides. All right, I'm going to get my cake tin over here. Oops. And I have my oven preheated on 200 degrees Celsius, so it's quite a hot oven. Or if you have a fan in your oven, you can do the temperature a little bit lower. Just pop it on like 180. And this usually takes somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes to cook through. Okay. So we get all of this out, and then you just want to use your offset spatula. And we're going to smooth this out. So if you're used to making traditional sponge cakes, this will be a little bit thicker than what you're used to, because we do have those stabilizers in the panis egg. It will be a little bit thicker, but don't worry, that is normal. Don't try and add more water. Okay, so we're just giving this a smooth out. It's looking good. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven, as I mentioned, for about 25 minutes. I'm going to go pop that in the oven, so stay tuned. I'll be back in like 10 seconds. We'll get this on for 25 minutes, and I'm going to get out my other cake. I've just had it chilling in the fridge, just so it's a little bit easier to cut. So we'll get 20 minutes on our timer here. 25. There we go. All right, sweet. Get my other cake. Oops. Okay, so here's one that I prepared earlier. There we go. Hi guys. So here is my cake that I prepared earlier, my Genoise sponge cake, which has been cooling. And I did just put it in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes just to kind of chill it a little bit. So now we're going to start making our sauce, or our dipping, our chocolate dip. So I'm going to bring you guys because we're going to kind of do a little bit of it on the stove. There we go. All right, so the chocolate dipping sauce. What we're going to start off with is I've got my bain-marie here. And you don't have to use a bain-marie, but sometimes your butter doesn't melt. So my boiling water has been sitting here for a while. Where is it? Oh, I better go get my water. I will get it. All right, guys. So I have my boiling water here. We are going to measure into our bowl. So for our chocolate dip, we need 124 grams. Isn't that precise? So this recipe, as I mentioned, I got from my teacher from Australia, Sarah, and they make really, really big batches. So because it would be for a bakery. So we are doing a smaller amount here. So we have the 124 grams of our boiling water. And then to that we want to add our vegan margarine. You can use a firm or a soft margarine. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so to that I also have, so this is some apricot jam or preserves. And you want to get the one that doesn't have all the little pieces in it. So if you can get the one without the pulp in it, that's great. Or just heat it up. I usually just put the jar in the microwave for like 30 seconds or something, and then just strain that pulp out, okay? So we're gonna give this a whisk. I'm just bringing over my Bain Marie because I want to make sure that everything gets nice and melted. So while that's melting away, we're going to take a big sheet of baking paper we had here, and we're going to start making our little train here of our coconut and our dipping sauce, okay? So I have some desiccated coconut. This is the fine one. This is like the most common one that you would see on your classic Lamington, but you do sometimes see people using the kind of like the bigger shreds. So it's totally up to you. And I always like to put like maybe half of my coconut down first because sometimes it can get a little bit messy. So I'm gonna pop that there, and then you need a couple of forks. So get those on the ready. Now to my butter and water mixture, I'm adding a little pinch of salt because I think that this really brings the flavor of the chocolate out. So I'm just put a little touch of salt in there. And then we have our icing sugar. We're going to pop that in as well. And I just like to sift it just so there's no big lumps in there. Just easier to kind of mix everything together. And then we have our cocoa powder. Don't use the raw stuff, guys. Use the toasted cocoa powder. This is unsweetened. Don't use the raw stuff. It's not dark enough and it doesn't have the same flavor. Okay, so just get the last of that in. Beautiful. So we're going to just mix this all together, make sure everything's all melted. Whisk that up. So it's a pretty easy recipe. It's not too tricky. It's just that sponge cake, getting it nice, getting that panis egg nice and foamy. And the folding, I suppose, is probably the tricky part, maybe. We do lots of different sponge cakes in the pastry and the baking course online. All right, so that's looking good. So while that's happening, we are going to cut our cake into cubes. I'll turn that heat off. I think there's enough heat in there. So I'm just going to bring my cake over here so you can see. And it's nice and chilled now. So let's have a look at the size of our cake. So it is, yeah, like we can trim a little bit off the, actually, you know what, yeah, we'll trim a little bit off the edge. We'll make it into 20 centimeters so we can do like 5. There we go. And I'll show you guys the crumb structure of our cake as well, so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to do 5 centimeter squares. So you just want to grab your ruler here and then just align it. So you've got 5, 10. I'm just going to do a couple with you guys. We'll flip it the other way. Do the same thing. So we have 5, 5. And then we want to cut our cake. Beautiful. And then, oh, there we go. I want to show you the crumb structure. See how it's nice and fine? So that's your Genoise. This one has a little, sometimes Genoise cake doesn't have any fat added, only just traditionally from the eggs, but we did add a little bit of oil just to make it a little more soft. And we'll flip it this way. Five, and 5. So we'll make 6 together today with you guys. So we've got squares. I'm just leaning my ruler up because sometimes I find I'm not very good at getting that nice 90-degree angle, and I find it kind of helps. Just that first cut, see? And then you can get the 90-degree angle. There we go. So we're going to do these 6 together. Okay. So I like to make sure you don't want to get those crumbs everywhere. So sometimes it's a good idea just to get yourself a brush and just brush any excess crumbs off. I'm going to put these over here. And then I'm just putting them back onto my cooling rack here. So we don't want those crumbs going into our chocolate sauce. Okay. Alrighty, so we can move this. There we go. Clean off our area. While chocolate sauce is ready to go. Got our train happening. So we have our cake, our 6 cake pieces. We have our coconut here, and we have our chocolate sauce, which is ready. So I like to, once you have your chocolate sauce ready, I like to put it actually into a smaller bowl. It's just much easier to dip. And using your forks, we're going to dip our cake into our chocolate sauce. Make sure it's well coated. And then I kind of like to dip it on an angle like this, just get off any excess. And then just on the side, oops, went back in. Slippery sucker. All right, so we're just going to take off that excess and then pop it in our coconut. Okay. I'm going to coat it in our coconut here. And you want to be careful because you don't want to get your coconut in your chocolate, see? All right, that's looking good. And there we are. So we have our 1 Lamington. Let's get the rest done. I think this part would be really fun to do with kids as well. You can cut all the little cubes up for them. And sometimes in Australia when we have Lamingtons, this is just the classic, but sometimes you can get it with jam or cream inside. So those ones are a little bit more decadent. But basically, every bakery, traditional bakery that you go into, you will see this pastry in there. The good old Lamington. It was actually invented in 1900s in Queensland by the Country Women's Association, and they made it for Lord Lamington for when he was, for some event for him, and then it just became very famous. So there you go, a little bit of history. We don't have that much history in Australia, but there you go, Lamingtons. And people will often eat this on our national holiday, like on Australia Day as well. Get the Lamingtons out. Got one more to go. See, I've got a little bit of chocolate in my coconut. It's not too bad. All right, last one. Get that excess off. There we go. All right, so that was our last Lamington. Let's get these onto a plate so we can have a better look. I'll bring you guys up. You can see all of our hard work. Got a bit of extra coconut on there. Look at that. So, there you have it, folks. Australian Lamingtons with our Genoise sponge cake, where we foamed up our vegan eggs into like nice foamy consistency, and then made that beautiful sponge cake which had that nice fine crumb structure. So guys, let me know what you thought about this video. If you're going to make Lamingtons at home, and grab yourself some panis egg to try out this very special type of sponge cake that's going to take your vegan pastry to the next level. Let me know in the comments what you want me to veganize next. Give me a bit of a challenge, huh? And if you want to learn more about vegan egg replacement, come join one of our programs online. We have the vegan cuisine, vegan cheese, vegan baking, and vegan pastry at vegangastronomy.com. And you can learn how to be a professional vegan chef and learn how to replace eggs in many different applications. So we'll see you next week on Wednesday, guys, 10 o'clock here, Eastern European Standard Time, and I'll catch you then. Bye.